Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining me today on Newsmakers. Well, as you know, universities around the country have had to make a lot of adjustments in the last few months since March and the pandemic, and things continue to change, but there's a lot of continuing learning as well at the universities. And joining me today, the Provost and Vice President of Academic Affairs for Missouri Southern, Dr. Paula Carson. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm delighted.
We're in the summer months and we have summer sessions, online teaching. We ended up the spring semester with online, but from an academic affairs point of view, if somebody asks you, how are things going from that perspective at Missouri Southern, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, I would have to say well, and beyond that, I'd have to say better than feared or even anticipated, perhaps. We've always had historically a very strong online presence here. We've had faculty who are very experienced, and we have a very good process for moving a class from traditional face-to-face to hybrid or online. So we had many faculty who were already quite comfortable with teaching online when we had to make the conversion. We're blessed with a lot of resources here. We have recording studios so that faculty members can deliver their lecture and it will be captured and it can be conveyed digitally through a variety of different media. So it was a lot of work for our faculty as well as for our students to adapt, but I would say that went pretty well. A couple of silver linings about that: our faculty who had primarily taught face-to-face were exposed to a lot of interesting and innovative software packages and programs and systems to help students learn digitally. And they liked them so much that we were able to use some CARES funds to acquire them. So even when we're fully back face-to-face, in the regular traditional way, these faculty will still be able to use these. So we put together a collaboration between distance learning and IT and academic affairs, what we call a digital backpack. So there's just numerous, almost a dozen different interesting innovative software platforms where instructors can develop their own animations, or they can integrate a variety of different multimedia, and their students can use that either in class, even if face-to-face, or outside of class. So it's been really great to have faculty show interest in that beyond the ones that are just more traditionally online. Our summer is historically online, so that was not a big transition, but so while it's going well, there still exists a great deal of uncertainty about the fall, about the COVID situation and the trends in COVID. I would say at this particular point, not exactly going the way we had hoped or expected. And so making sure we have those contingency plans in place for fall should we have to pivot on our pedagogy.
Now, I know after the spring session, there was a time to kind of evaluate, and there were state reports about how schools transitioned and so forth. I'm sure Missouri Southern also had a chance to evaluate by talking not only to the instructors, but to the students.
Yeah. Throughout the whole, from about mid-March, throughout the rest of the semester, we did a lot of inquiry to see how it was going and what we could do better. And so we had a very large-scale survey of students. It was a very interesting time for us because normally if we send out response surveys to students, we don't get very robust responses, and we have to do, but I don't know if it was just a desire for students to have some mechanism for voice, or they were home and bored. I don't know what the situation was, but we had just an overwhelming number of students respond very, very quickly and share their thoughts and perspectives. And it was very, very interesting to us. I think there were a lot of insights from those studies that were revealed that really helped us to change the way we were doing things, change our plans, change the types of supports we were offering to students. So, for example, we have students who have always learned online. Their courses have always been online. We have some degree programs that are all online. And we thought for sure for those students it would be business as usual, nothing would really change. But what we found is that the online students in many ways experience the same sense of isolation and distress as students all over the nation and the world, for a couple reasons. One, many had their families there, and so it was a struggle for them to dedicate the time they needed to online learning. But second, the library wasn't open and the traditional places they would come on campus to study. And so whereas they would use those for learning, they would also use those as opportunities to interact with other students and have social interaction. Those were shut down, and the online students were experiencing really as much distress as any student in those areas. Also interesting, we found that students were very capable of learning online. It wasn't about mastery of the content, but they very, very much missed the face-to-face experience and being on campus and being in a classroom because of the social interaction and the ability to have immediate responses to questions from faculty members and to bounce ideas off of their peers. And so we were afraid it would inhibit learning or mastery of the student learning objectives, but it was in many cases, in most cases, that they just miss being around a community of scholars, of other learners, and doing it alone, even though they were fully capable and were able to learn, they just didn't enjoy it as much.
So that social aspect playing a big role. You know, you want to be able to see your classmates, you want to be able to interact with them.
Unexpectedly large for all students, all across the whole spectrum, no matter what types of classes they were taking or you know, what their age was. We just found that people missed being part of a congregation on campus.
When you say a campus, you're talking about people and people being together.
Exactly.
And with those opportunities of the new technology and programs that faculty can use, it sounds like perhaps there's an evolution of how you teach I say the younger generation, but the newer students. They grew up with the computers. They know that type of technology, but you have to intersperse that. It's not just stand up in front of a class and lecture.
Yeah. It is interesting looking to the future. You know, we were all teleworking for a while, from about mid-March until early May. All of us on campus are teleworking. So many of us had the opportunity to watch our students continue, our children as students continue to learn online. And you really have to think about that. Now, suddenly you have middle schoolers, in some cases elementary schoolers, who have become, over this period of months, pretty adept and comfortable at learning online and imposing that self-structure that they need and understanding how to navigate the technologies available to them. So while I know that those students also miss the interaction and the opportunity to be at school with their friends and their teachers, I think the expectations are definitely going to be elevated about how we do online. You know, online is just sort of an evolution of old-fashioned correspondence. You know, back when decades ago when I was in college, you just did it all by mail. Here's your questions, here's your textbook. Mail in your questions when you've answered them, not, you know, type them when you've actually written down answers to them. And so online education is really a distance modality, is really just an evolution from that. But I think as these students have had the opportunity to experience very, very enriched online education, that their expectations are going to be higher, which really very much played into our idea of getting all of our faculty really adept and having access to that digital backpack, you know. So if you want students to maintain their concentration and focus on learning, online education has to have that edutainment part of it in order to maintain interest and the absence of social cues to do that. So I really think higher ed in general is going to have to step up the game on media-rich learning.
So new approaches for the instructors, the fact professors. Well, with all this going on, there's still programs being developed at Missouri Southern, things that are happening. And I know that you had a Board of Governors meeting in June and brought up some of these topics. But I think for the community to hear about this, that, you know, we didn't just stop at Southern. We're still planning for the future.
Absolutely.
So a lot of different programs and following up on existing programs. I know one of those you mentioned was the Yours to Lose program, which was started and is still ongoing. You're still working with students and you had graduates.
Absolutely. Very excited. In May, we had our first cohort of graduates from the Yours to Lose. So the Yours to Lose program, again, is a collaborative partnership with KCU. And students are admitted by a committee that represents both KC faculty and Missouri Southern faculty. And when they are admitted to the Yours to Lose program at Missouri Southern, it guarantees them, given that they sustain a certain GPA, it guarantees them admission to KCU without additional requirements. There's no MCAT, there's no interview. It's a very great program because it allows students to really focus on learning the material, mastery of the material that they'll need to be successful in medical school, rather than competing or studying for the MCAT or preparing at length for interviews. So it's an excellent program, novel. It's still the only one of its kind in the nation. We're very proud of it. So students in Yours to Lose will get a biology degree, a BS in biology. It's a 4-year full degree. It's not a truncated degree. They'll get the actual, but it's accelerated. And so they complete that in 3 years. And it's the whole number of required hours for a biology degree, just compressed and accelerated, plus an international experience. So our first cohort of students 3 years ago were admitted and graduated in May. We were not able to celebrate that. We wanted to have a pinning ceremony like is typical for health sciences. We weren't able to do that, although we're still planning on that. When new students come into the U.S. Sleuth cohort, we green coat them.
Right.
So when they go to medical school, they're typically white coated, but we green coat them. So we're going to have a combined ceremony for pinning of our graduates who are now starting medical school, basically this month. And green coating our new incoming students. So it's been a wonderful, wonderful partnership. Working with KCO has been very rewarding. They're really good partners. Really, everyone knows important for our community to have the medical school here, but they have just been true collaborators for us at Missouri Southern, and I'm very grateful to them.
So that partnership, that working, collaborating really has made a difference for the schools as well as the community in the future as these graduates come through there. And
we're focusing more and more. Obviously, our program Yours to Lose was of great interest nationally because it's one of its kind, but we are really trying to encourage, by our faculty actually going out and visiting with local high schools, we're really trying to encourage more students from the geographic area to apply and to complete it, because we know those students are more likely to stay in the area and practice, which is the ultimate goal of the partnership.
To help this region. A lot of things that people have heard about, some of the topics, they've heard about pollination, the Pollinator project here at Missouri Southern. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, we had a faculty member come to us and say, she said, really like to put some beehives on the prairie. The prairie has been a really longstanding, valuable asset for us. We have so many different courses and students and studies going out on the prairie. You drive by and it just looks like some overgrown grass, you know, but there is so much alive inside the prairie about what's happening. And so entomological studies, we do actually carcass studies, decomposition studies, and so a whole range of things out there. We had one faculty member who said, like to put some beehives out there, and we were super enthusiastic about them, embrace that. They're out there. We have had 2 or 3 harvests of honey, very popular honey with the community.
See them at the bookstore, right?
In fact, we had to have a honey sale during the quarantine period. It was socially distanced and very safe and kind of contactless, but there are people who just couldn't get through the quarantine without their honey. So we had a special sale of that. So that's going really, really great. But as we know, honeybee populations are declining globally, and that has significant impact on our food supply. And so what was proposed is that we create greater honeybee habitat for our hives, but really for all honeybees, migration, the whole community. And so when we built Nixon Hall, which is our new math building, it's a beautiful building designed specifically for learning math, which was tremendous accomplishment, but there's a pretty steep hill behind it that is difficult to mow, and not a lot of people necessarily see it unless you're in sort of
around the back side of the building, right?
Yeah, and we thought it would just be perfect to plant with pollinators. Now, pollinators are beautiful when they're blooming. They're not always attractive necessarily when they're not, but the bottom line is it's good knowledge for our students to gain, and it's really good for our environment and for our community. And so we're developing a pollinator hill, we call it. We will plant it so that wildflowers that bloom at different times throughout the longest growing period possible will bloom, that we know it will be very attractive. We'll have a lot of student engagement, and it will not just be biology students or club students that work with the bees. We're looking at having a sculpture garden out there, so working with some art classes. We are looking at putting fencing around there, that split rail that is actually harvested from trees back behind the biology pond that have died. So sort of repurposing that trees, and so it'll be a very exciting environmental but very student collaborative initiative. So we had hoped to start that this year, but obviously with COVID we couldn't necessarily get the students together to do what we need to do, and it's cyclical. So you have to
push it off till next year when you get in there and do the plantings.
Exactly, but we are moving forward with that, and very, very excited to welcome the community when that is available. We think there are lots of opportunities for for even K-12 students to come and learn, for the community to come and participate in maintaining the garden. So we're thrilled about that.
Great. So that's a way to tie the community and the campus together. Something else I've heard about, you have the African Art Project on campus. And a few years ago, we heard that we've got this great art project and a lot of African art, but now it's taken the next step.
Yeah,
basically.
it has. It's an amazing asset, the African art collection that we have. We've had it. It was the majority of it was generously donated many years ago, but we never really had a great place to display it. We would bring it out and put an exhibition at various times. But obviously when you have such a precious art collection, you have to maintain and store it very carefully. So we didn't have one environment that was sufficient for all of it. So we had some of it that was archived in the art building. Some was in plaster, which is our business school building primarily. So it was spread all out over campus. And we really wanted to bring the collection together, and we really wanted to bring it together because we're developing some certificates and many more courses outside of art in other areas with social sciences as well. We wanted students to be able to learn from that. So it's preservation and curation, but it is history and looking into the backgrounds of the objects, and it is archiving, and it's displaying them for museum exhibits, and there's a specific talent and skill set to doing that. So we were able to relocate some things in the library. We have a large room in the library where the exhibit is all together in its entirety for the first time in many years, maybe like 40 years.
It's
the
all
first
been different
time the
locations,
exhibit is together. We're very delighted that Christine Bentley, who works, art faculty who works a lot with the collection, was able to acquire a grant, very special grant, very competitive grant. And this month we will have an architect and preservation specialists come to our campus that are paid by this grant to help us make sure that we are preserving and conserving it correctly. And architecturally, the space is optimal to make sure the collection is safe and that we can display it in a way that will most interest patrons. So we'll have students from a variety of different classes working with the collection daily. And again, many of the pieces in the collection are really priceless. They're very valuable and very interesting. And it's such an asset that's always been sort of hidden, but we're very excited now the community may have better access to it.
And have a library, a good location to go see it and have it there all the time. Now you mentioned certificates and developing new courses. I've heard some talk, you've talked about in the past at the board meetings, drones and archery air rifle. People say, how do these tie into Missouri Southern?
Yeah, they're very excited about all of these programs. And in fact, this summer we were able to start our pilot drone class primarily with faculty and staff from Missouri Southern to make sure that it would go okay. And the students that are in that this summer in our first course are just about ready to take their FAA test. They're scheduling their tests last night and this morning. So in the fall, we're going to kick off our 3-semester series of our drone program. It will result in a certificate, but if students elect to take the test with the FAA, they'll also become certified, which is increasingly important. As more and more are flying drones, it's important to make sure people know the safety guidelines and that they have the licenses to do that. So the courses, across the 3 courses, people will learn how to operate drones and how to operate drones safely, how to modify drones based on the industrial needs, because almost every industry has some application now. Yeah, natural sciences and business and marketing and insurance, and so there's applications everywhere. So we'll learn how to sort of build a drone and modify it, and then we'll actually pass all the tests for FAA certification to be able to legally fly. So we're delighted about that. We're very excited, had a lot of student enthusiasm. We'll be doing it out kind of behind Liggett and Platt in that area down there, but inclement weather will be flying them inside the FEMA shelter. So it will go on despite the weather. We also know that our area high schools that are just really critical feeders for us at Missouri Southern have really excelled in archery.
There's a new program a lot of them have started.
Yeah, so they're just state and nationally recognized students, and they want to continue that as sort of a lifetime sport or hobby, and we didn't really have much for them. And So we wanted to make sure that students, even if there's not an academic credential, that we were able to offer them enrichment opportunities that would keep them engaged. So we've been looking at it for a couple of years. The thing with archery is it takes a lot of space, you know,
right.
archery and air rifles.
Can't do in a small room, right?
Yeah, so we'd get the equipment, take it up, but we'd have to take it down. The volleyball team had to practice, or we had a physiology class in the area. So, but we went on and figured out a way that we could make that work. And so we will start. It's offered by the Department of Kinesiology. Have to thank their faculty members that have just been very, very passionate about hosting the high school competitions and about setting us up so we could actually have the class. And we're going to start that class in the fall. And I think it's going to be really great. So many students have said, is there anything for me at all? You know, I want to come here. This is my school of choice. This is my degree, but I really would like to keep this skill up. And so we're thrilled that that's something we're able to do.
And those both sound like lifetime skills or hobbies that you can carry through. You know, that you really, it's not just I'm taking this class and I go on. It's something they've been doing, they want to continue doing. So
yeah, we continue to really try to strengthen our lifelong learning. You know, now we talk about our lifelong learning. It starts at 1 when we admit children into the Lion Cub Academy, and we're really looking for opportunities through degrees, credentials, continuing ed, that people can be part of the Missouri Southern family and continue their learning just as long as they possibly want.
Right, everybody wants to continue learning. Well, tell me about the Fire Academy. That's a program that people may have heard about, but what's happening at Missouri Southern with that?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And another program we're very excited about. So we have long had an EMS program, a paramedic program, and that has been really critical to the healthcare needs of our communities. But more and more, just like every industry, it's very much evolving. And so there are communities who really need to have a very proximate presence of emergency medical responders, but also those who are trained in fire. Many smaller communities operate on volunteer fire, but to have someone more professionally trained in firefighting would be a great value to the citizens of the community. So we have been working with the Joplin Fire Department, again, have been very, very good collaborators about in some ways merging the emergency medicine and the fire training program so that students graduate as fire paramedics. It's a high demand throughout the nation for these fire paramedics, and it works out perfectly. So we would actually deliver some of the fire portion using Joplin Fire Department faculty are all credentialed and all certified, and all the curriculum has been reviewed. But out there at their actual training facility, which is something we could never recreate or really replicate.
Right, Joplin is a newer facility. That's really
nice.
It's
amazing. I had the privilege to go out there and tour it and see how they just recreate these infernos and different structures. So I think it'll be great learning for our students, and then we'll continue to do the emergency medicine here. Again, we have a lot of investment in our emergency medicine. We have the ambulance simulators. We have a lot of other simulators. We have focused this past year, whenever we had equipment money available, we're really focused on acquiring respiratory therapy type ventilators, all different types of ventilators that probably people have never really heard of prior to COVID, but are becoming household terms for us. So we're very excited. It's always great to partner with the city, with the fire department. It's just very synergistic, and I think it's part of what we as a university are really supposed to do. So it's a privilege that they're wanting to work with us.
So really tying the campus to the community through the educational efforts and what's going on and things that are happening.
And making us all safer.
Right. Well, looking to the fall, and obviously we're a little ways away, but there's a process that the university is going through, as you mentioned, evaluating what's going to happen for the fall. And your academics, I mean, you have people enrolling for courses now as we're still talking, and so it's not too late to sign up for those classes and get admitted even to Missouri Southern.
No, it's been an interesting time. Nationally, there's been a lot of discussion about high school graduates, incoming freshmen, taking something called the gap year, which of course is an academic I don't get, you know what I mean? It's like, let's just take every year to learn as much as possible. I think there's a lot of consternation amongst incoming freshmen that the university experience will not be the same as it was 2 years ago or even last year because of social distancing restrictions and just other precautions that we have to take. But we're very, very excited. We will have those face-to-face opportunities. We will have online opportunities, and we are very excited to welcome students here, but want to do so really, really safely. So We started mid-March with planning for return to fall.
We're doing August, right?
We actually started in November for planning for the spring, which was well ahead. But if you're looking at a potential pandemic situation, you know, and now back in November there were some cases, so we started really early. We're sort of blessed with that planning horizon that is distant. So we started about in March looking at the contingencies for fall. And we ask all of the faculty to be prepared for 4 scenarios, just a whole traditional return to normal semester face-to-face for a situation where it was not safe for our students to return to campus, so all online, or conversion midway. So starting face-to-face and having to convert at some point to online, and starting online because we didn't know the seasonality of the virus, starting online and being able to return to campus face-to-face. So I think our faculty are prepared for whatever it is we need to do, but our plan right now is face-to-face, respecting social distancing. So in the coming days, you will see us discussing masking on campus. We have made a lot of plans so that we're going to take larger classes, and half of them will maybe meet on Monday and the other half on Wednesday or Tuesday, Thursday, or splitting the classes. We have relocated many classes to larger classrooms so we can observe the social distancing. So we're kind of doing it class by class. Ask the faculty, what accommodations do you think need to be made to your class to make sure the students can have that face-to-face experience if it's a face-to-face class and still be safe. So we have a COVID task force. It meets at least once a week. All different areas of campus are represented, and we really want the students back, but we also know that we need to protect the faculty, students, and staff in doing so. And we're really dedicated and passionate about doing that.
Well, really, if anything, the pandemic has taught a lot of people you have to be adaptable. You have to be able to adjust. You know, and this is an example of the university and everybody adjusting to the situations.
It's at one point I would say something, and an hour later I'd have to retract it. Things were so dynamic. I'm like, I'm just not going to say anything anymore because invariably it will not be correct, and by tomorrow morning. So it's been very, very dynamic. I hope that there's an object lesson for students in our society. I think that there is. I think that the way we have had to adapt to survive the last few months, and it's really just been a couple months, is really phenomenal. And I hope that there is permanent benefit to that. And we're hoping to capitalize on that as well.
Right. Well, if people want more information, of course, we have the Missouri Southern website. They can call the offices. They can find out more. And I look forward to talking to you in the future about other programs as they come along and how things are happening at Missouri Southern.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for joining us this week on Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join me again next week at the same time on this station. We'll see you then.